Throughout its television run, Regular Show cemented its place as a cult classic and a fan favorite during what people describe as the golden age of not only Cartoon Network, but cartoons as a whole. Regular Show consists of 8 seasons running from 2010 all the way to 2016. It was also the longest Cartoon Network show with 261 episodes until Adventure Time eventually overtook it. We all know Regular Show will go down in history for being an amazing cartoon. It won an Emmy for Outstanding Short Animated Program in 2012 and was nominated for 5 others. Regular Show was also the first cartoon animated by Cartoon Network that was rated PGV instead of PG, indicating more violence than other cartoons that were produced. With all of that being said, let's jump right into it. But first, a word from our sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is without a doubt one of the most intricate and strategic games I have ever played. It features some of the biggest and best battlefields gaming has to offer, and even hosts more than 2,000 planes, helicopters, ships, and tanks. War Thunder also has the most individual and tactical damage systems gaming has ever seen. Say goodbye to the days of set damage and such big and general hitboxes. With Damage X-Ray, you can see exactly which parts of the enemy vehicle you have hit, leading to fresh, dynamic gameplay every game. A part of the game I'm personally a big fan of is the freedom to play how you want. Land, sea, and air. Each game has the freedom and ability to choose your own strategies, and with unique gameplay, it really puts you behind the wheel. And now, thanks to our amazing sponsor, we have something for you. You can play War Thunder today on Xbox, PlayStation, or PC using the link in the description and the pinned comment of this video. Doing so, new players, as well as players returning after 6 months or more, will receive a large bonus pack including multiple premium vehicles, an exclusive 3D decoration of your vehicles, and much, much more. Now, this is only for a limited time, so go ahead and click that link right now to get it. Thanks to you guys for listening, and thanks to our great sponsor again, War Thunder. Let's get back to it. The premise of the show is all about Mordecai, a blue bird, and Rigby, a brown raccoon, who works as groundskeepers at a park. Throughout the show, we see them try to keep themselves busy, form relationships, and get on everybody's nerves, basically all the time. Also, fun fact, apparently the show takes place somewhere in California, as seen on Mordecai's license plate. Some familiar faces that will be seen either throughout their park or in their limited social life are Benson, a gumball machine who manages the park and frequently gets upset with Mordecai and Rigby. Pops, a kind yet strange old man who resembles a lollipop. He's the adoptive son of the man who technically owns the park and is seen there often. Muscle Man. This dude annoyed the bonkers out of me when I was younger. He's a green guy who likes to make mom jokes. Like Mordecai and Rigby, he's a groundskeeper of the park, and his best friends with High Five Ghost. High Five Ghost is mostly just floating around and giving good vibes. Skips is an immortal yeti? The characters in this show are quite strange. He's closer to Benson than the others, but is also a groundskeeper. He's normally seen trying to fix Mordecai and Rigby's silly mistakes and misfortunes. The Power. Starting off exceptionally strong, Season 1, Episode 1 begins with an outer space adventure. The episode starts with Mordecai and Rigby being idiots, as we'll find is quite common, and fake wrestling a meat burrito in the room.
I'm gonna give you one more chance to take back what you said about my mom! I'll kill you!
Unfortunately for them, during their shenanigans, they accidentally punch a hole in their wall. Horrified that Benson will find it, they think of ways to fix the problem. Mordecai suggests that they attempt to get raises in order to coin the extra money and fix the hole in the wall without Benson ever even knowing about the incident. Rigby agrees and is convinced that ham boning, which according to Google is the act of stomping, slapping, and patting of one's arms, legs, and or chest, will impress Benson into a raise. Mordecai, suspicious of this for obvious reasons, declines this idea. Rigby loudly announces, "You never know, ham boning might save your life one day." Little did he know he was absolutely correct, but we'll get to that soon. Instead, Rigby pulls out a red keyboard, which Mordecai proclaims that it should work instead. The boys name it power, and are soon shown that it is actually capable of granting them wishes. When they approach Benson and ask for a raise, he gives it to them happily. The boys then realize the real power and, because they're dumb, accidentally send Skips all the way to the moon.
To go to your room.
Yeah, Skips, it's time for you to go to the moon.
Scared, the boys and the rest of the gang, Benson and Pops, are sent to the moon through their wishes only to find Skips being attacked by a giant monster. A monster that the boys also somehow accidentally wished for. In order to save Skips, Rigby begins ham-boning onto the monster to distract it for long enough that Skips is able to escape. Ham-boning is the ultimate weapon, apparently. Back on Earth, Benson takes away the rays, and with no way to fix the hole in the wall, Mordecai places a poster on top of the hole, which in hindsight would have been what any normal person would have done in the first place. Dawn. In this later episode, we learn about some serious sibling rivalry.
Touchdown, suck faces!
Benson explains that the park is in trouble because Pops tried paying their taxes with lollipops instead of real money. Mordecai summons Don, who is Rigby's older brother, to come to the park and audit the situation since he is an accountant. Rigby doesn't want Don to show, since Don is taller, more attractive, smarter, and a better person than he is. When he eventually does show up, he tells him horrible, nasty sibling things, like the things you say when you're hot in the back of a van on a family vacation level bad. Specifically, that he wishes that Don was never born.
No, wait, Don!
I'm sorry. I just gotta get out of here.
Rigby then tries his best to audit the park himself, but ends up screwing it up, since he has no accounting knowledge, and the park slowly starts to disappear. Mordecai forces Rigby to make amends with his brother in order to save the park, and when confronted, Rigby explains to Don that he feels as though he outshines him in every aspect of his life. So much so that people assume that Don is the older brother when he is in fact younger than him. Don apologizes to Rigby for making him feel that way, and the two reconcile. Aww.
If you say your mom, you're fired. My mom? Get out!
Don goes back to the park to fix the audit, and the episode ends with the two brothers being much closer than before. Mordecai and the Rigbys. We learn a little about Mordecai's first love interest, Margaret, in this episode. This episode begins at the coffee shop where Mordecai and Rigby try to look cool with fake band t-shirts that they printed out.
Order the shirts! Order the shirts! Oh yeah, t-shirts.
Margaret notices these shirts and tells the boys about an open mic night where multiple different small bands perform. In order not to look absolutely lame, Mordecai and Rigby are determined to learn how to become an actual band before their performance. They look for help from their future selves, who are somehow famous musicians. Their future selves show them all that they know, but never actually show them how to play. The night of open mic, they absolutely demolish and are super good somehow.
Your eyes staring into my eyes, who am I but a guy?
Mordecai then realizes that none of their equipment is hooked up and their mics aren't even on. He stops the performance in order to reprimand lip syncing and apologize for what was happening. Him confessing and talking about the issue impresses Margaret, but she then tells him that she's actually there with her boyfriend, Angel. Oof.
Come on, baby. We don't want to be late for our dinner reservations.
It's time. More Mordecai relationship drama ensues in this early Season 2 episode. It all begins when Rigby is able to make Margaret laugh multiple times, much to Mordecai's dismay. Rigby even goes to the lengths of inviting Margaret to watch a movie with him, even though he knew Mordecai wanted to invite her to a movie as well.
Briefs or boxes?
You're so funny, Rick.
Rigby explains that the only reason he's doing this to Mordecai is because he can't admit that he's jealous / he hasn't been able to ask Margaret out himself.
You know what I like best about Margaret? The way she's not going out with this guy!
Angry, Mordecai melts all of the clocks in the house in order for Rigby to not be able to know what time his movie is. Father Time transports the two boys. In the process, Mordecai accidentally murders Rigby by pushing him into an abyss.
I'll kill you!
Father Time explains to Mordecai that if he can't admit to his feelings, then nothing will get better. Mordecai agrees and begs Father Time to let him go back and change his past mistakes, mostly feeling horrible that he literally just accidentally killed his best friend. Father Time agrees and he is sent back to them still at the coffee shop. He decides to go to the movie with Rigby, and when Rigby asks Mordecai if he's jealous that he can't make Margaret laugh, and Mordecai can't,
Looks like you got a latte on your plate.
he eventually agrees that he's just a little bit jealous. High score. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby attempt to beat the all-time world record on an arcade game. Eventually they do, but then are forced to face off with the game's all-time champion, Garrett Bobby Ferguson.
Let's play.
After a long and fought-out battle, Mordecai and Rigby are successful in defeating Garrett Bobby Ferguson.
You know you want some broken bones.
Broken bones!
And he explodes in a large pile of goo. Ugh. Benson be gone. In this later episode, Benson goes rogue. Well, not really. Benson gets in trouble with his boss and is blamed for Mordecai and Rigby's shenanigans.
My car!
His boss introduces them all to Susan, who appears to be a human with blonde hair. Because Benson is no longer the boss, he has been demoted to a regular worker like Mordecai and Rigby. Their lazy ways of slacking off get to Benson, but instead of being able to do some work while slacking off, he refuses to do any, deeming him to be a full-time slacker. Because of his lack of effort, he is fired. Benson only decides to get his life back together when he runs into a homeless man that explains how he used to be the manager of that park before Benson, but was fired for being a full-time slacker. His encounter with what could be his future self freaks Benson out so much that he gets his old personality back and is determined to take back the park. Upon his return, he notices that all of his old workers are now little clones of Susan, not able to do anything for themselves and all following her direct orders. Benson eventually is able to get through to them. He orders Mordecai and Rigby to relax and play video games, which turns them back to normal. Angry, Susan turns into a giant monster, but is defeated once the homeless man that was seen before takes over their boss's limo and drives it into Susan. He sacrificed his life to essentially save Benson from his own sad fate. Benson then gets his job back and for the first time in the series lets Mordecai and Rigby slack off, mostly because he's just relieved to have his job back. Temp check. This later episode begins with Rigby not wanting to do any of his work anymore.
Let me guess. You like pyrotechnics?
No, but I do like this.
He hires someone he meets off the street named Doug, who is desperate for money to do all of his chores for him. It isn't long until all of his friends like this new person a lot, however, and they even start referring to him as Rigby.
Hi, I'm Rigby, and I got me a meatball sub.
Rigby confronts Mordecai about this, and he says that he legitimately can't see a difference between them anymore. Rigby gets in a fight with Doug, and as the two wrestle, his friends realize that the two look identical, and they can't seem to tell which one is the real Rigby. They ask a series of questions, and Doug ends up winning. Mordecai gives him a hug. Meanwhile, the real Rigby starts complaining about the test. Mordecai then announces the real Rigby actually be the winner, since the real Rigby would never give him a hug, and also complains a lot. After the police are called, they find that Doug's real name is Doug the Doppelganger Shablowski, and he has been scamming people from all around.
Unbelievable!
Hey, Mordecai, want to make an easy $10?
Do me a solid. A game of solids goes rogue within this episode. It starts with Mordecai and Rigby asking each other to do normal solids,
Do me a solid and change the channel.
like getting lemonade and things of that nature. Later that day, Eileen asks Rigby out on a miniature golfing, to which he only agrees if Mordecai is able to go as well. But with Margaret, Rigby is doing Mordecai a solid, but in return he asks for 10 solids. Wanting to hang out with Margaret, he agrees. But the date is basically a bust since Rigby makes him do so many random things since he owes him so many solids.
It needs to cool down.
The last solid Mordecai refuses to do, which causes mass destruction, and the universe basically starts splitting apart, until he finally gives in and does it. Whatever it was very bad, and Rigby recorded it. Mordecai disowns him as a friend until Rigby eventually breaks the tape in half that had the video recorded on it, and all is well within their friendship by the end of the episode. The only bad part about this whole situation is Margaret reveals to the group when the world was falling apart that the only reason to go on the date was to do Eileen a solid, meaning she didn't want to go on a date much like Rigby. This hurts Mordecai's feelings, as it should, and causes him to finally give in the first place. First day. Fun fact alert, this episode is actually a prequel and is a remake of the pilot episode that never aired in the US. It shows how Mordecai and Rigby first got the job at the park. The episode begins with Mordecai and Rigby finding Benson's posters that are desperately begging people to come to work as groundskeepers for the park. They take up the offer and are hired by none other than Pops. Later in the episode, the two are fighting over who gets to keep a cool chair that they like that Pops and Benson are planning on throwing out.
This is the most uncomfortable chair I've ever sat in.
They decide to play rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to keep it. Benson notices the boys playing and tells them to stop because it's an evil game. The two don't stop and continue to get tie after tie.
99 times in a row!
All of a sudden, a loud voice appears inside a black hole and yells at the boys for their continued ties. The black hole starts sucking up everything and attempting to suck up everybody. Before it can completely engulf Rigby, the two boys decide to throw down one more time, which gets rid of the portal. Benson screams at the boys for what they've done and tells them to clean up all of the mess or they will be fired. The episode then ends with the boys playing rock, paper, scissors, and the loser has to pick up the mess. How they could possibly not learn their lesson by the end of that? I have no idea. Camping can be cool. More updates on Mordecai and Rigby's love interests. This episode begins with Mordecai and Rigby inviting Eileen and Margaret to go camping with them. Rigby at first doesn't want the two girls to come, as he knows Eileen has a crush on him and he doesn't feel the same way. He questions whether Margaret's boyfriend would be okay with her camping with two random men. She emphasizes that she isn't in a relationship anymore and that all guys are dumb. You got this, Mordecai. Don't mess this one up. The four go camping and bond a lot.
Hey, Mordecai, where are the matches?
What?
The matches! I want to cook some hot dogs!
Rigby is even seen playing video games with Eileen by the fire and seemingly having a good time. Mordecai and Margaret have frequent cute moments as well, but none lead to anything serious. Towards the end of the episode, they get attacked by a morbid deer that is determined to kill all of them, but they escaped. The four end off the episode happily reflecting on how much fun they had camping together. Think positive. This later episode begins with Pops being a cute little guy doing cute little guy things, trying to have a good time. Benson, however, interrupts his time by constantly yelling at Mordecai and Rigby. Pops calls Benson into his office and tells him that if he can't stop yelling, he will fire him. Benson then tries multiple things in order to not yell anymore. Anger management classes, counting to 100.
But what do you think he'll do when he gets to 100?
788, 89, 90, 90.
Etc. But nothing works.
Hey, buddy, are you okay?
He bottles up so much rage that a giant inferno of red starts engulfing things around him. Skips, scared and worried for Benson, asks Pops to release him from his "if you yell, you're fired" authority. Pops does, and Benson absolutely unleashes on Mordecai and Rigby. His words are a beam of red that hit them so aggressively that by the end of the episode, when Benson tells the boys to clean up the mess, they literally can't hear because they went deaf. Replaced. Benson has had enough of Mordecai and Rigby not showing up on time for things, and barely doing things in general. He hires two other dudes named Jeremy and Chad. Jeremy and Chad are instantly better at everything that they do, and Benson hints that he's going to fire Mordecai and Rigby to replace them. The boys resort to sabotage, but nothing works.
You ripped
left the bag on purpose.
No, he didn't. It was already like that.
Then what's that knife doing in your hand?
They end up brawling with Jeremy and Chad, which also just causes more issues, but no sabotage. Mordecai and Rigby then think of making a party to distract Jeremy and Chad from their jobs. It doesn't work, but the loudness does awaken lake monsters that create an all-out brawl. Afterwards, Benson fires Mordecai and Rigby, as they were the ones to cause all of the chaos. He then offers the job to Jeremy and Chad, but after going through all that they went through in such a short amount of time, they decline. By the end of the episode, Mordecai and Rigby have their jobs back, much to Benson's dismay.
We know a couple of dumb suckers who are real good at cleaning up pizza parties.
Yes, dude, yes! Warning, a lot of relationship drama is about to ensue. The episode begins with Mordecai witnessing Margaret exclaim to a man, "Yes, dude, yes!" This happened while the man was on one knee, so he automatically assumed that she was getting engaged. This sends him into a deep depression. Rigby, trying to get him out of this funk, sets him up with a dating profile thing so he can meet other people. Mordecai eventually meets CJ, a cloud-like girl. He kicked it off with her but explains that he isn't really looking for a relationship. CJ is okay with this, and the two just do a bunch of cute stuff and hang out together.
Tied game.
Whoa!
Cheap shot.
Later that day, though, Mordecai sees Margaret with the guy who she's allegedly engaged to. He leaves quickly so as to not have to interact all that much. Back at the park, he is still incredibly depressed, and Benson has had enough of it. He then gives Mordecai surprisingly good advice. He says that since Mordecai never even told Margaret about how he felt, then he has no reason to be upset. And that if he actually wants closure within their little fling, then he needs to confess to her how he feels. Mordecai then goes to the coffee shop in order to do just that. When he finds out that the boy she was engaged with was actually her cousin, who was an amputee who just got fitted for a new prosthetic.
Margaret screamed so loud when I told her. She was all, "Yes, dude, yes!"
To make matters worse, CJ was there to witness Mordecai's confession and instantly became jealous, turning into a storm cloud and wrecking the inside of the coffee shop. Margaret then gets jealous that Mordecai was hanging out with a different girl, and by the end of the episode, he ends up getting rejected by both of them. Ooh, that must have stung.
You want to go to the movie?
Nah, I'm over it.
Aw, what?
Fancy restaurant. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby are tasked with helping Muscle Man become fancy before his date with Starla and her family. The episode begins with Starla telling Muscle Man that it's time to take the relationship to the next level. Whew, Muscle Man must be finessing that bag. She tells him that she wants to take her parents on a fancy dinner date. Muscle Man makes a reservation at a restaurant but is terrified because he doesn't know how to be fancy. Mordecai and Rigby then teach him how to be more fancy.
How do you feel?
Fancy. I can't do this.
The dinner ends up going horribly, and they have to leave. They go to Muscle Man's favorite chicken wing restaurant instead. Surprisingly, both Starla's father and Muscle Man throw off their shirts and start screaming, "Woo!" together. A match made in heaven, I suppose. Bad kiss. Mordecai is silly. This episode begins with Mordecai and Rigby out in a park with Margaret and Eileen. Mordecai forgets his wallet in Margaret's car. Margaret shows up to help him find it, and they end up kissing. The only issue is she thinks his breath smells bad from the hot dog that he had eaten earlier. He's so embarrassed that he and Rigby find a time machine, go back in time, and attempt to prevent him from eating smelly foods.
Come on, they're really good. Here, take a couple.
Dude, quit it.
Just take out. Stop!
They also try to get past Mordecai to use mouthwash, but he refuses and gets frustrated with future Mordecai's story.
Hey, baby, can you help me find what I'm looking for? Okay.
Dude, quit it.
They eventually get back to their respective time frame and destroy the time machine. Mordecai is back in the car looking for his wallet. Realizing what's about to happen, he quickly finds his wallet before Margaret can kiss him. The episode ends with Mordecai never getting his kiss, but at least didn't have a bad one. Exit 9B. This two-part special begins with Thomas, a goat-like humanoid, showing up at the park to start his job. He can't find anyone until he hears loud screams from outside the house. He runs out in terror to find a strange man with a beard shooting red lasers at everybody. The only two that are able to escape are Mordecai and Rigby, who only barely make it out by using their time machine device. Seen in Bad Kiss, in which we already went over. The two end up zapping 2 months into the future, where they notice all of their friends have been brainwashed, presumably by the red lasers seen before. The park is set to be demolished in order for the new highway to be put in. Mordecai and Rigby, however, have a paper that can technically make the park a historical landmark, nulling it out and protecting it against demolition by the city. The only issue is that in order for their document to work, they need every member of the park to sign it. They go around town and find their old co-workers, and they are able to jog all of their memories. Except for Benson. As stubborn as ever, he refuses to regain his memories and sign the paper. It is then revealed, after Mordecai and Rigby are captured by the strange bearded man, that the man is actually Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr., the son of Garrett Bobby Ferguson, the man from Season 2, Episode 7's High Score. He explains to Mordecai and Rigby that Exit 9B is only a revenge tactic for them, stealing his father's world record high score. Skips comes to the rescue with a bunch of allies to the park in order to save Mordecai and Rigby. A huge war ensues. Towards the end, Mordecai and Rigby are able to run, brainwash Benson by being idiots and making him pissed enough to remember their old shenanigans. Benson signs it and the gang thinks that it's all over until they realize that Thomas too has to sign it, even though he had just started working there that same day. After much resistance, caused by Bobby Jr., the papers are signed and all is sent back to normal.
Thanks, guys. Does stuff like this happen all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Guys Night. This episode isn't important at all. I'm only including it because I find it hilarious that in order to be cool, Pops tries to beat the boys in a milk-chugging contest. Like, what is even happening? Not to break the fourth wall or anything, but one of the female writers says, is this actually something that happens at Guys Night? I must know. And I'll tell you right now, no comment.
Guys' night?
TGI Tuesday. The amount of times people bash parties on Tuesday in this episode is crazy. Have I ever partied hard on a Tuesday? No, not necessarily. Would I? Yeah, probably, I think. Leave a comment down below if you've ever partied hard on a Tuesday. Anyways, this episode begins with Mordecai, Rigby, and Eileen deciding to throw Margaret a party, since she's going to be busy most weekends since she must study to get out of junior college. We've all been there, Margaret. We feel ya. The main issue the three run into is figuring out where to throw the party.
Ain't nobody in this town gonna hold a party on a Tuesday. You hear me? Nobody!
After running into Benson and learning about how he wants to close up the ballroom that is on park property, they decide that's exactly the place they could use. They start to fix it up only to realize that their stuff keeps getting messed up again. Several ghosts then reveal themselves and explain that the ballroom is theirs.
You see, in 1985, we threw the best party ever right here in this ballroom.
And the only way they could leave is if they were beaten in a dance battle. Cut to an epic battle that follows. The ghosts win against Mordecai, Rigby, and Eileen. Mordecai gets annoyed because the ghosts just did the same dance moves over and over again. This is when they all have a deep conversation, and it's revealed that the ghosts were holding a similar party, like the one Mordecai wants to throw for Margaret. But before their party could be held, they died because they partied too hard before their friend could even show up. Mordecai explains their situation and the ghosts agree to help them out. When Margaret arrives, she's super thankful and assures them that she isn't going anywhere, but that the party was a super sweet idea. The episode ends with her and Mordecai slow dancing. At this point, I can't decide if I'd rather have Mordecai go for Margaret or CJ, but I guess we'll see what happens. Family barbecue. This later episode begins with Mordecai being invited to Margaret's family barbecue. Eileen warns Mordecai that Margaret's dad refuses to shake any boy's hand that she brings home, which only makes Mordecai want to shake hands with him more. After meeting Mordecai's mother at the barbecue, Mordecai is introduced to her father, Frank. After failing multiple times at getting a handshake, it is then revealed that the only way he would give a handshake is if the person beats him in a cannonball contest.
Why is the front like that?
That's the back.
Maybe I'll skip the pool.
Mordecai agrees and is quite stubborn. So stubborn that Frank calls in a helicopter to make the jump higher and higher. Mordecai doesn't back down and eventually straight up asks Frank why he's so hell-bent on not giving out handshakes. Frank explains that he doesn't want to lose Margaret to some boy. He sees her as his little girl who should always be his. Mordecai tells Frank that Margaret loves him very much and talks about him all of the time, and that there's no way he could ever lose her. This touches Frank's heart, and he asks the pilot to lower the helicopter back down. All of a sudden, the helicopter loses control and Frank flies out. Mordecai grabs a parachute and jumps after him. Frank questions why Mordecai would try and save him given how mean he's been to him. Mordecai explains that if Margaret loves someone that much, then he should too want to save those that Margaret cares about. The only problem is that the two of them are too heavy for the parachute and it ends up breaking. Frank, in a last-ditch effort to make their dying moments a little bit better, shakes Mordecai's hand with much respect. The two slam into the pool and are later seen in full body casts. The doctors tell Margaret that the only reason they survived is because of their handshake. Someone call a real doctor because I'm not quite sure that's how that would work.
Ball! Man and ball! Man and ball!
You know this, bozo?
Nope.
Dodge this. The main plot of this episode being a dodgeball match isn't quite important. The important part is that Mordecai ends up having a stalemate with CJ. Throughout the episode, we see Benson's team that consists of most of the park workers go against a bunch of other teams. At the very end of the episode, Mordecai and CJ are forced to face off together as they are the last ones alive in the match. They both throw their signature moves at the exact same time, but both balls hit each other and ricochet off. The two are then transported to the epic Dodgeball Council. It is here that the council confronts them and says that in order for them not to be in a constant stalemate, they need to talk about their past and work out their issues.
I honestly thought you were mad at me.
Really?
The two end up talking their stuff out and are mutuals towards the end of the episode. Mordecai even agrees to let CJ win by throwing the dodgeball directly into his face. Benson is quite upset about this, but hey, at least there's no more awkwardness between them, right? Right?
There's always next year, Benson.
Skip's story. This magical episode begins with Skips deciding to tell his immortal story to Mordecai and Rigby. Disclaimer, this is the saddest episode of regular show I've researched so far, and you should skip this part of the video if you're prone to tears. Skip's story begins with Skips in high school, except at this time period, he goes by Walks. He starts getting in fights with this one dude who is unable to be hurt by anybody who isn't immortal. One of his buddies gives him fists of justice in order to cause the bully any physical pain. He plans on fighting until he meets a girl named Mona. Mona and Walks fall in love and go on many dates together. They are seen skipping multiple times and are even planning on going to the prom together.
Will you go to the prom with me?
Of course I will.
Walks is then invited to a formal fight the night of the prom. He agrees to it. For some reason, men are so silly in this show. He gets distracted by Mona, however, and wants to continue dancing with her at the prom instead. All of a sudden, the bully shows up and throws Mona away from Walks. A fight ensues, and a chunk of the ceiling falls and crushes Mona, causing her to die. Walks beats the living crap out of the bully man, and sadly mourns Mona's death afterwards. the guardian of eternal youth offers to make Walks immortal so that he can beat up the bully every 157 years. Walks agrees, and when they ask him what he wants his new name to be, he replies, Skips, because it reminds him of the good times he had with Mona.
I'll skip till the end of eternity. It's my way of being close to her.
The episode then cuts back to Mordecai and Rigby, who are absolutely sobbing, as everyone should be at this point. It ends with both of them being glad they aren't immortal and feeling a newfound respect and sadness for their friend Skips. The end of Muscle Man. This later episode in Season 6 begins with Muscle Man telling everyone that he leaves this world tonight. This alarms people as Muscle Man had just met with his doctor. Their fears are confirmed when death shows up as well. Muscle Man's friends help him complete all of the activities on his bucket list. That night, when his time is almost up, everyone starts to mourn the loss of him. That is, until Starla arrives and Muscle Man stands up and proposes to her? Whoa. Recap time. After Muscle Man presumably died, he revealed that he himself didn't die, just the Muscle Man part, leaving him to just be Mitch. He figured that Starla would rather just have Mitch, as Muscle Man is kind of childish and goofy. Starla, however, tells Mitch that she declines his proposal as she fell in love with Muscle Man, not Mitch. Muscle Man happily reverts back to his old self and proposes again, this time with Starla agreeing. Everyone at the park gets pissed off because they all thought Muscle Man was literally going to die.
I blew 12 grand on you today!
This is the main reason why they did all of his bucket list activities and things like that. They questioned him about why Death showed up, and he explained that he summoned Death so that he could get his great-grandmother's ring. They also questioned him about seeing the doctor right before he made his big announcement, to which he explains that he went to see if he was in good enough shape to get married. The real Thomas. This shocking two-part thriller begins with none other than Rigby finding out the truth. The ironic part is, because Rigby's the one who found out the truth, nobody believes him until it's too late. The episode begins with Rigby hearing loud arguments outside the park house. When he goes to investigate, he sees what looks to be Thomas in a dark outfit fighting another man.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not much.
Is that dude okay?
When Thomas sees Rigby, he knocks him out. Rigby wakes up the next day in his bed as per usual. He questions Thomas and is super suspicious of him, but he isn't able to catch anything out of the ordinary. He tells Mordecai and the others about his suspicions, but nobody believes him. That is, until they open up the pantry and 2 more Russian spies fall out. Eventually, they're all captured.
Benson, why don't we finish this conversation somewhere more public?
Benson's date that he had been on that was mentioned previously in the episode ended up being the leader of the spies. Thomas is also revealed to be called Nikolai and is referenced as Nikolai for the rest of the episode. Nikolai explains that he grew up in Russia and became a government spy after he was abandoned by his parents at a young age. Russia's spy program then set out to different parks located in the US so that they could in turn make their parks back in Russia better. Apparently, Russian parks were the laughingstock of the world because they were so bad. Nikolai then reveals the final part of their plan, which is to launch the park and fly it to Russia's motherland. He sets off detonators that break the park from Earth's surface, and he had apparently placed them in engines/levitation devices in order for the park to be able to fly. During their flight to Russia, Nikolai learns of hidden plans created by the Russian government to attack the US with missiles. Nikolai doesn't actually want to hurt anyone, especially not his friends from the park. Nikolai then expresses to the boys that he felt like an outsider at the park since he was just an intern. The boys apologize for making him feel that way, and that, although he is boring, they had a good time together.
Thomas, go get us more chips at the store.
Fine.
He struggles with Natalie, and she ends up falling off the park landmass and being eaten by a whale.
Natalie!
Dude, She tried to kill us!
Nikolai returns to the park and is offered a full-time job by Benson. He refuses as he is now a fugitive of not only the States, but Russia as well. Rigby ends the episode by saying, "Nikolai, you'll always be Thomas to us." Aw, how sweet. Merry Christmas, Mordecai. Buckle up for some relationship drama, my favorite episode. So, Mordecai and CJ are dating now according to this episode. Sorry y'all, but I'm not going to talk about every single episode that he and his relationships form. Anyhows, the episode begins with Eileen inviting Mordecai and Rigby to her Christmas party. All is well until she reveals that Margaret is also going to be there. Mordecai starts freaking out. He's happy with CJ, but the way he left things off with Margaret is also awkward. He also hasn't told Margaret about the fact that he's with CJ now.
Mordecai?
During the party, CJ realizes that the reason Mordecai has been acting so weird is because he's worried about bumping into Margaret. CJ gets a little skeptical, but Mordecai reassures her that all is well and he's super happy with her, and is glad that he's with her now.
I don't feel that way about her anymore. I'm with you. That's all I care about.
CJ is seemingly satisfied by this answer and goes to the bathroom. Awkwardly enough, Mordecai runs into Margaret during this time, and they start going over their history together, and he explains that he's in a new relationship and that he's super happy. Margaret is also happy for him, although the tensions are high and they start reminiscing about old times together when all of a sudden they realize that they're kissing. What the actual heck? CJ sees it happen. She storms out of the party. Literally. Get it? Because she's a cloud. Mordecai runs after her, but she's already driving away. He goes to pull out his phone to call her, but can't find his phone anywhere. He goes back into the house to look for it and notices all of Margaret's stuff in boxes in Eileen's spare bedroom. After questioning what all her stuff is doing there, Eileen reveals that Margaret is moving back in with her while she finishes her degree. Is it just me, or does Margaret need to stay far, far away? CJ and Mordecai were perfectly happy before she came back. Sad sex. Don't worry folks, the drama continues. The episode begins with Mordecai desperately trying to mend things with CJ, but nothing seems to work. He takes a lot of advice from Sad Sax Guy, who gives terrible advice. Everything he told Mordecai to do backfires horribly and doesn't work out. Rigby ridicules Mordecai for even thinking about listening to the Sad Sax Guy, but Mordecai only realizes how bad the advice actually is after like the 5th time his advice fails him.
Oh, come on!
Huh? CJ! CJ, wait!
After not listening to the Sad Sax Guy anymore, Mordecai asks his mother for advice instead, since mothers know everything. She explains to Mordecai that the only reason her and his father have stayed together for so long is because they have a no-lie rule, and she urges Mordecai to have a truthful heart-to-heart with CJ. After almost losing his literal life to set up a cute message for CJ, Mordecai gets her attention and they talk. Mordecai goes in depth about how he and Margaret were together for a while, and that seeing her at the ugly sweater party rekindled a lot of old feelings that they both shared, and they kissed on accident. CJ accepts his apology since she knows it's the truth. They kiss under the mistletoe, and all is well. No great double date. In this episode, Margaret lies to CJ and Mordecai and tells him that she has a boyfriend. Mordecai then invites her on a double date with him and CJ.
Just go with it, okay, Del?
I think I love you.
See, acting, just like that.
Towards the end of the episode, Margaret is forced to tell the truth, which is that she doesn't have a boyfriend. She only said that because she still has feelings for Mordecai, but didn't want to make things weird between him and CJ's relationship. This obviously upsets CJ, which causes a rift in her and Mordecai's relationship.
Good luck getting that bungalow in Connecticut by yourself. I'm keeping the kids.
Dumped at the altar. At this point, all of Season 6 is actually just relationship updates. Not to completely ignore Rigby and Eileen, but they've also been dating for a few months at this point. This is revealed during this episode. Rigby hadn't told Mordecai for so long because he didn't want to rub it in his face that his relationship is fine and easy while Mordecai has had so many issues. Anyways, this episode begins with Mordecai confessing to Rigby that he and CJ have still been awkward ever since Margaret confessed her feelings towards him.
Besides, no offense, dude, but what would you know about relationships anyway?
Well, actually, smart guy.
This episode is mostly important because Muscle Man and Starla are getting married. We love to see some people be happy and content. If only Mordecai could learn a lesson or two from them. At the wedding, Mordecai is asked to read Muscle Man's dad's letter because Muscle Man is too emotional for it. The letter is about following one's own gut.
In any relationship, it's normal to have doubts.
Mordecai then steals the spotlight and tells a long speech about how he needs to follow his gut, and he doesn't even know if he has a soulmate as nobody completes him that way yet. Angry, CJ storms out of the wedding.
You didn't even point in my direction.
CJ!
The two talk and agree to take a break. Mordecai might be the worst dude at figuring out relationship issues, and I've seen some pretty stupid men in relationships before. When confronted about how horrible his speech was, Mordecai responds with, "I'm not good at these things." Clearly. The Dome Experiment. This later Season 7 episode gets wild, so buckle up and get some popcorn. The episode begins with Benson explaining to the group at the park that the city is going to put a dome over the park for a month at a time throughout the year to run experiments on it and create a secluded ecosystem. Benson is very hell-bent on the fact that it's starting tomorrow, but the dome dropped while he was explaining the situation. Benson calls Mr. Mallard, the owner of the park, who tells Benson that he must have gotten the dates wrong. However, one thing about Benson is he never gets the dates wrong. Benson gets super suspicious because of this and even feels as though his backup mail that he prints has been tampered with. He says the paper is thinner than the paper he uses to print things.
You were wrong about the date. Now can you please just help us?
We really need leadership right now.
Benson decides to leave the group and investigate for himself. He finds a smaller dome within the dome with lasers and flying robots and things. As soon as the scientists inside notice that he sees them, they knock him out and relocate. Benson goes back to the group at the park house and finds that they've completely conformed to their situation.
Those aren't for eating, they're for planting, dude.
Oh, that explains why they're unsalted.
They started a garden and High Five Ghost is their new boss. Benson doesn't care about any of these things because he's really only worried about proving that he didn't get the date wrong. He takes everyone to where he thought the dome was, but it's gone. Everyone thinks Benson is losing his mind, which only sets him off more. He then goes into the woods and fends for himself, learning how to shoot a bow and arrow, growing out his beard, and thoroughly stalking the little dome. He infiltrates the little dome and finds blueprints and papers showing the real motive of the dome experiment, which is to send the dome into space. Benson is completely blind to this, however, and continues to prove that he didn't get the date wrong for the dome dropping. The lead scientist enters the room Benson is in and introduces himself as Dr. Dome. After a brief conversation, Benson finds out that the dates were tampered with. The scientists realized that Benson was literally only worried about him messing up the dates, and he had not put together any of the other information he found, nor did he know about the dome going to space.
The data isn't as compromised as we initially thought.
Yeah, wait, what are all these blueprints for?
They knock him out again. When he awakens, he seems to be in the park house, but in reality, he's surrounded by a bunch of scientists who are just dressed up as his friends.
Yeah, tell us more, sir!
Sir? What did you call me?
Benson quickly realizes this and escapes. Meanwhile, his friends are also looking for him as he's been gone for a long time. A scientist with a fake puppet tries to calm them down by telling them that he actually did get the date wrong and that he apologizes. Obviously, they realize this is not the real Benson and question the scientist as to what is actually going on. The real Benson arrives on a flying motorcycle that he stole and tells everyone that he was right all along and that they never should have doubted him. They all hop on the bike and are determined to gain back their free dome. An epic battle ensues and the park residents are finally able to escape. They are confronted by military vehicles and army tanks, one that consisted of Mr. Mallard. They question why the dome was put there in the first place, and he gives them BS answers until they are satisfied. He also tells them that he did switch the dates, which was literally the only thing Benson cared about. And the episode ends. Jim Blonsky. Rigby finally graduates high school. The only class Rigby didn't pass was PE, which he doesn't even remember why he didn't pass it in the first place. He goes back to high school to take it again, but runs into his old nemesis, Jablonski. Jablonski is his long-term substitute gym teacher, and he makes Rigby's life, well, hell.
Once a loser, always a loser!
Rigby eventually challenges him to a food racing competition. Rigby wins this, and Jablonski admits that he feels like a major loser, especially since he's a long-term gym sub. Rigby cheers him up and tells him that they've both matured. Jablonski respects these words and passes everyone in the class. Rigby's graduation day special. You need to watch this. The end of season 7 is a 30-minute long special. Rigby is finally graduating college. He's asked by a TV show to make an epic speech so that they can record it and post it. Rigby at first doesn't want to do this, but is told by his dean that if he doesn't, then he might take away his graduating rights. Throughout the episode, Mordecai is seen getting more and more annoyed with Rigby.
Hello!
Class?
It's only when Rigby runs off his graduation stage in fright that Mordecai explains to him what's been going on. Mordecai has always been a better person than Rigby. He's usually smarter and knows more about the world. He felt angry that with Rigby graduating high school, that they would be on the same playing ground. He apologizes as this isn't fair to him to think. They make up. Not to get emotional or anything, but something I appreciate a great deal about regular shows is how real their characters are. I genuinely see myself multiple times throughout the show. It's honestly quite therapeutic to see these characters succeed and develop as people. Anyways, back to the goods. Mordecai then helps him with his speech, and when Rigby delivers it,
Let my success today lift you up so that you too can do great, hard things.
everyone is impressed. All of a sudden, the park residents are told that they need to head back to the park imminently. Once there, they receive a message that says that they can finally fully complete the dome experiment if they press the red button inside the park. They all race to go hit the button, but when they do, they are rocketed up into space. Eileen is then seen coming out of the park house with a celebratory souffle that she made as a surprise for Rigby, meaning she's also in space with all of them now. Once space day at a time. The beginning of Season 8 starts off right where Season 7 left off. The news explains that parks all around the United States have been blasted off into space. The park residents start wagging out, with Mordecai being the one to calm them down. They have a morning meeting where they go over all that they did before in the dome and decide to take it one day at a time. Several groups are given different tasks in order to help the group as a whole. Skips is in charge of finding cell service, Mordecai and Rigby are tasked with exploring the tunnels under the park, Pops and Eileen take note of their food supply, and Muscle Man and High Five Ghost find miscellaneous items that they can use. The groups get to their assigned tasks. Benson eventually finds Mordecai and Rigby, who didn't do much except find some of the machinery that was involved in the dome experiment episode.
Also, I've got Eileen, and you have me.
Benson screams at them because they've been goofing off while everyone else was working. All three go to the surface. The group has assembled a sort of cell service device, but it ends up malfunctioning and breaking down. Benson then starts to blame Rigby for them floating into space, and they get into a physical fight. They are broken up and all of a sudden notice a flying object that they are nearing. Skips uses his binoculars to identify the object, and it turns out that it was Skip's old car phone. After many struggles, the gang finally retrieves the car phone, but it only has one message on it: trust no one. They are all then engulfed by the shadow of a giant ship that flies directly over their dome. Cool brobots. Robots emerge from the ship that was shown at the end of the last episode. They tell the crew how to send their dome back to Earth, much to everyone's relief. However, Mordecai and Rigby are suspicious as the car phone told them to not trust anyone. and the robots are being extremely kind to them.
You're being paranoid.
Don't call me paranoid! It makes me paranoid!
They sneak onto their ship and find that they are actually Reaper bots, who collect organic matter and sell it on the black market. Mordecai and Rigby attempt to warn the park residents back on their Earth slab, but nobody believes them.
One who says their pizza is better than Papa Quasar's? What?
That is, until people from the space tree show up and start battling the robots with Mordecai and Rigby. At the end of the episode, the park dome is revealed to have a control room that was built inside of Pop's room. They use this to be teleported to the space tree. Welcome to space. The park residents are introduced to the people of the space tree, one particular person being Colonel, who seems to be the leader. He shows the park residents a short video explaining how they have been chosen to undergo a space experiment, where they are now able to travel the galaxy. Everyone is super excited about how cool it all sounds, except for Benson, who says he was forced into this program against his will, and he doesn't want to be away from his home planet. For once, I actually agree with Benson. I too would be quite frustrated.
Benson, check it out. Cool pillows.
Those pillows are not cool.
Benson is so frustrated that he actually opts to go back to Earth using one of their space bots. Once back, he finds that his apartment has already been taken over by college students. His landlord didn't think he'd ever come back. He also is unable to find a job and ends up being homeless. His Earth experience is so incredibly bad that he wishes to be back on the space tree. He then opens his Earth pod? His horrible visions ended up all being a hologram of what could/would probably happen if he tried to go back to Earth. Benson decides to stay on the ship and everybody cheers him on.
No, Benson, wait!
You're making a mistake!
I should have stayed in space!
The key to the universe. This episode begins with Earl showing up.
I am Earl from the tape. Now, who's ready to trade?
Earl tells the park residents of Pop's grand feature and meaning in life. Essentially, Pops has an anti-Pops, and every 14 billion years or so, they have an epic battle. However, because they have the same combat capabilities, they end in a stalemate, which is shown to be much like the Big Bang. It completely destroys the universe they were a part of and creates a brand new one. Earl is said to be the trainer of Pops, but he claims that this time around, it doesn't have to end in the entire universe being destroyed.
You make a nice footstool.
He starts to train Pops in non-traditional ways, basically just at-home chores. Funny Karate Kid reference right here. Pops goes wax apply, wax remove, instead of wax on, wax off when waxing the floors. Pops eventually has enough of this and claims that Earl is a horrible trainer and isn't teaching him anything new. Earl then gives Pops a fragment of the last universe, which transports him to his last battle. Pops sees all of his friends vanish and has a silly little mental breakdown. He runs away to his happy place, which is just a shack that he took all of his belongings to when his room got taken over as the control room in a previous episode. His friends arrive and tells him that it's okay to be scared. Earl then throws a lemon at Pops and tells him to catch it, except Pops is now able to catch the lemon with his mind. He also squished it with his mind as well. Okay, 11 from Stranger Things moment. The episode then ends. Hey everyone, this is a really quick reminder to check out the War Thunder link in my description and the pinned comment. Great sponsors like this make sure that I can give you guys the best content possible. As I said, new players and those returning will get a great sign-up bonus, including premium vehicles, 3D decorations, and much more. Thanks again guys, and back to the video. Kill him with kindness. Pops' training is complete, and he is much stronger than everybody else. Although Pops is physically ready to defeat his evil brother Anti-Pops, mentally he doesn't want to fight. Pops has a naturally good-hearted nature and doesn't normally resort to violence. Pops starts to talk to Anti-Pops in secret. Anti-Pops takes advantage of him and his willingness for peace and invites him to an arcade planet where they can talk everything out. Pops tells the park residents, and they all profusely tell him not to mess with Anti-Pops and that he cannot be that easily reasoned with. Pops insists that it is fine and even decides to bake Anti-Pops a cake. At the arcade planet,
I've secured a quiet place that's locked right this way.
Good show.
Pops soon realizes that he is in grave danger and that he was a fool to think he could get through to Auntie Pops. Before Pops literally gets murdered, Skips and the others rescue him at the last minute and bring him back to the park. During their rescue mission,
fulfill your destiny, Pops. Get him to the rendezvous point.
Earl gives his life for Pops and leaves the other park residents with one message: to bring Pops to the Seer on Planet Nielsen. Meet the Seer. Following immediately after the last episode, the park residents continue to take Pops, now in critical condition, to the Seer. Once on Planet Nielsen, the park residents are shown a history recap of the planet. Nielsen used to be a booming planet where hundreds of analyzers would watch different universes and see how many people were watching each one. This all came to an end when streaming showed up. Streaming didn't care about views because it already knew how many people were watching. It also banished all the analyzers into hiding. Eventually, the good services, such as DVD and HD DVD,
whatever, I still have better sound definition than you.
Tell that to my 10 gigs of extra storage.
fight off streaming long enough for Pops to talk to the Seer. The Seer tells Pops that he needs to go back to his home planet, Lollyland, to fight his anti-self. She also tells him, after much begging, make it a jolly good show.
Time to cancel our subscription.
The park residents then escape Planet Nielsen right before it explodes because of the fighting. They enter the coordinates to Lollyland, and Pops is dumbfounded as it's his favorite thing in the whole world: a lollipop. A regular show epic final battle. The park residents show up to Lollyland and are greeted by some natives. They show tapestries and tell the tales of the past battles, and past park residents are seen fighting alongside Pops. Mordecai comes up with an idea to set booby traps for anti-Pops.
Traps, 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 traps!
You already said we'd do it!
In order to give Pops an upper hand that he hadn't had in the past.
Sup, you Malum Cranus?
When Anti-Pops shows up to fight, Pops begs not to fight again. Anti-Pops isn't having that nonsense, however, and starts the epic final battle. At first, the booby traps work, but Anti-Pops is able to escape from them relatively easy. Epic Final Battle Part 2. An epic battle ensues. At first, Pops tells Anti-Pops that whoever lands the first blow can be declared the winner and decides the fate of the universe. Anti-Pops agrees until Pops is the one who actually lands the blow. So he says never mind and continues fighting. Brother fights, am I right? An epic battle erupts with many other side characters involved as well.
Baby ducks! What's up, dudes? Greetings, dudes!
It gets more and more heated until Anti-Pops unlocks his Titan form and starts erasing everybody on Lollyland. Pops gets so angry after seeing Muscle Man and High Five Ghost get erased that he too unlocks his Titan form.
All your friends are going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it.
The two are about to collide fists. Mordecai notices this and tries to stop it by flying into the middle of the fist punch with Rigby in his passenger seat, right before the entire universe can reset. The episode then ends. The Power, Part 3. This third part begins with the same beginning as the first episode, The Power, with Mordecai and Rigby fighting with the beef burrito stuffed animal. Rigby, however, gets deja vu and regains all of his memories.
We actually still have our jobs for like 6 years after this.
You're being insane.
Mordecai shortly after also regains all of his memories. The two then realize that they must have created a time rift or a glitch of some sort and use the power to go back to where they should be, at the end of the universe with Pops. Pops resumes his battle with Anti-Pops and is thrown into a cartoon short, Naive Man from Lollyland, which was actually a short animation that the creator J.G. Quintel created long before a regular show was a concept way back in 2005. Pops escapes the animation and flies back into the battle. On his way to try and save Rigby, Pops must avoid massive letters in space that spell out regular show. and before he can reach his friends, he is pushed back by like a million sticky notes. Mordecai is then seen yelling in confusion, and under him you can see dialogue notes for the voice actor. Auntie Pops explains that the very fabric of their reality is unraveling. Pops realizes in his moment of panic that the only way to solve the 14 billion year battle is to sacrifice himself and his anti-self so that he can save all of his friends. He ends up hugging his brother, and after them both being content,
I know you're sad, but I promise this is a happy ending. Take care of each other.
flies them into the sun. Everyone comes back and the dome is landed back onto Earth. Over the next 25 years, a lot happened. Rigby and Eileen settle down and have 2 children. Muscle Man and Starla have 6 children together. High Five Ghost and his lover Celia DJ in Prague and also end up having children. Benson continues to work at the park and marries Pam. Skips also continues to work at the park. Mordecai goes on to become a famous artist and meets Steph, a Batwoman who is also an artist. They end up settling together and have 3 children. There is a park reunion after all this time in which Mordecai and Rigby are seen saying their catchphrases and walking off together.
Whoa!
The screen then turns into static, and the VHS seems to be playing in what looks like to be heaven. The VHS pops out and reads regular show. Pops then exclaims, "Jolly good show," and the show concludes. A regular show movie. Before I begin, I'd like to mention that this film made about $44 million at the box office when it was released in 2015. Also, there isn't quite a set time frame from when this movie takes place within the series, but it's rumored to be between the first 2 episodes of Season 7. In the future, Rigby is seen leading a rebellion squadron against an evil cyborg named Mr. Ross. It is also shown that Mordecai is also a cyborg and is hell-bent on destroying Rigby for something Rigby did to him in the past. Rigby, barely able to escape him, makes it just in time to the time machine. In the present, Rigby shows up and explains the situation to past Rigby. He mentions a time-nado, a tornado that can travel through space and time, that Rigby and Mordecai created when they were in high school. Unharnessed, it doesn't do much damage, but Mr. Ross harnessed its energy and started creating mass chaos within the universe. He wants Mordecai and Rigby to go back in time to never create the time machine. He also warns Rigby of a secret he's going to have to tell Mordecai that holds the fate of the universe within it. Mordecai and Rigby then explain to the other park residents that they created the time-nado because Rigby got into their favorite college and Mordecai didn't. Mr. Ross was their science teacher at the time and was blamed for their shenanigans and arrested. In the past, they successfully convinced Rigby not to try and create the time machine and make a model volcano instead.
Universe saved!
They thought this worked until they witnessed Mr. Ross guide Mordecai and Rigby back into the lab to botch another time machine. They race to fix it but are blocked by Mr. Ross and future Mordecai. Mr. Ross then threatens Mordecai's life if Rigby doesn't spill his secret. Rigby then tells a horrible tale of how they were in high school. Mordecai got into university, but Rigby didn't want their friendship to end, so he messed up the letters and said that he got in instead. Ooh, bad move, bro, bad move. Mordecai lashes out and tells Rigby that their friendship is over. Mr. Ross then tries to kill Mordecai to further hurt Rigby, but future Mordecai sacrifices himself instead. Future Mordecai then tells present-time Mordecai not to side with Mr. Ross, even though he's frustrated, and he also gives him the keys to his time machine. Rigby, extremely hurt by Mordecai's words, runs away and even tries to do the bad thing we're not supposed to do.
Fly me into the sun so I won't have to be so sad anymore!
Fuel cells critical.
He is then confronted by Father Time, who tells Rigby that he has tried everything except saying sorry to Mordecai. Rigby sets off to find him before it's too late. Meanwhile, the park residents are called to try and stop the time-nado since it's messing up Earth's timeline. The park rangers are then seen flying towards the Time-nado, trying to stop it from continuing its current crazy time-destroying situation. When Mordecai goes solo to get onto the ship, Rigby flies into him and they crash together. Rigby chases after Mordecai and finds him held at gunpoint by Mr. Ross. Mordecai ends up charging Mr. Ross and they fight alongside Rigby. The battle isn't going their way, and Mordecai ends up falling with all of the plutonium that they were going to use to blow up the time machine. The two then are able to somehow push Mr. Ross off of the bridge and the fall kills him. Rigby then apologizes sincerely to Mordecai and they reconcile. Rigby then decides to do the unthinkable and sacrifice himself to destroy the time machine. Mordecai doesn't let him do it alone, however, and walks the plutonium with him, claiming that he also wants a cool memorial statue when they both die. All of a sudden, Mr. Ross comes back to life. He has a weird thing on his back that allows him to go back in time 10 seconds if he ever dies. Never fear though, because Rigby pulls out some sick Star Wars moves and literally slices Mr. Ross's head off with a lightsaber. The two are then able to throw the plutonium into the time machine and escape.
I'm sorry.
That's all I've been waiting to hear.
And that, my friends, concludes our full recap of the regular show. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to see more content. Leave a comment if you shipped Mordecai and CJ or Mordecai and Margaret more. Or perhaps comment about your favorite episodes and shows you want us to recap. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a jolly good day.